Okay, I'm back. In the middle of my story with you, the alert went off telling us 65 and older, stay put, stay home. So the emergency broadcast station. So I'm sorry I interrupted us. So as I was saying, the Lone Ranger for me was a hero, and I watched it religiously as a child. And a number of years ago, I was reading the Jewish magazine. It was a 2014 edition of the Jewish magazine. And I found a story there written by Sid Hecker, If the Lone Ranger Had Been Jewish. And I thought this was so funny, I thought I'd share it with you tonight. This is just like going back to days of yesteryear when the Lone Ranger rode and you could listen on the radio. That was before my time, but I imagine that was a very exciting time for families to sit around together and turn on the radio. The Lone Ranger sat on a huge boulder in the high Sierras, belatedly studying for his bar mitzvah. But let us return to those thrilling days of yesteryear, to the Ranger's family. You see, when the Lone Ranger, whose real name was Levi Rabinowitz, was 20, his 75-year-old Uncle Morris married a lovely young woman named Shira. So Levi had a new aunt. The marriage, as might be expected, did not work out well, and after 3 years, the couple parted. Meanwhile, Aunt Shira and the Ranger had become good friends and soon began traveling together. It was not long before the pair became known throughout the West as the Lone Ranger and his faithful companion, Tanta. So on that fateful day in May, as she helped him with the Torah portion, they heard a shot from below, and a posse was seen in the valley pursuing a rider in a black hat at least 2 sizes too large. The disguise was only minimally effective, so the Ranger immediately recognized him as Mendel the Marauder, a member of the good old notorious infamous Verschluginger gang, acronym the Ganefs. Instead of joining the posse, the Ranger whistled for his great white horse, Silver, whose full name was Silverstein. He rose toward the edge of the mountain as Mendel came around the bend and flew off, dropping 30 feet onto the bandit's speeding horse. With a loud "Oi!" the thief tried to elbow his adversary off the horse, but he was no match for the masked man. They both hit the dust and fought furiously until the posse caught up. They immediately placed a noose around Mendel's neck. "Stop," called Tanta Shira as she wiggled down the mountain path to the light of the posse. "You can't hang a man, even this nudnik, without a trial. You're not even sure he's guilty. Justice, justice shall you pursue," from Deuteronomy, "and you must administer it without corruption or favoritism." "Where does she get that stuff?" asked Tex, a member of the posse. "From the Torah portion, Shoftim, Dvarim, chapter 16, verse 20, replied Shira. Pulling out his pocket Tanakh, Bible, Tex quickly flipped to the correct page and after a few seconds said, "Oi, you're right. So let's just lock him up," said Sheriff Heschel, and they hauled him off to the local clink. "Hi-ho, Silver!" called the Ranger as he and Tanta Shira rode off into the sunset, which was not so easy since it was only 8 o'clock in the morning. They parked Silver and Scout, Tanta's horse, at the local Kinney garage and boarded the train for Abram, a real town in Hidalgo County, Texas, which was close to the little Mexican town of Chutzpah Verde. They had heard that the rest of the gang was holed up there, making a tumult. As they watched the scenery, the train door opened with a bang and a very tall cowboy in a 10-gallon hat and 2 6-guns entered. "Are there any Jews in this here car?" he shouted. The Ranger, who was afraid of no one, looked up and shouted back, "Yes, I'm Jewish. What do you want?" "Will you all please step into the next car? We need one more for a minion." "Can I come too?" asked Tanta. "Of course," said the big man. "We're Reconstructionists." We would say Reform Jews. After Shacharit, the morning service, the Ranger and Tanta were about to relax, but were accosted by a rather disheveled-looking Indian who sat down near them. Noticing the Magen David on Tanta's necklace, he said, "You Jewish?" "Yes," said Tanta Shira. "Sure wish I was Jewish," said the Indian. "Hat nit Suris genug." "You don't have enough trouble? Why would you want to be Jewish? Don't you know? All Jews is millionaires. When a Jew goes broke, all other Jews give him a quarter, and he gets to be a millionaire again." "That's interesting," she said, as she reached for the style section of the Daily Forward. Arriving at Abram, the pair searched out a saloon for some refreshment. "What'll you have?" asked the bartender. "Sarsaparilla," said the Ranger. The saloon went silent. A huge Mexican stood up and walked toward the bar. He wore an 11-gallon hat and carried 3 7-guns in his holsters. He was known as El Diablo. He tapped the ranger on his right shoulder. Slowly, the masked man turned. El Diablo took one step back and said, "Good grief, it's the Lone Ranger." "Oh, sorry to disturb you, sir." And he bowed, walked backward to his table, and sat down. An elegantly dressed but somewhat inebriated Westerner sauntered up to the bar and, after ordering a Dr. Brown's Celery tonic, began toasting to Tanta about his big ranch. "Why, all could ride for 2 hours and still not reach the end of my spread." "Yes, I had a horse like that once," noted Tanta. "You live around here?" he asked, trying to be friendly. "No, but my Uncle Reuben has some property of about 35 acres around 50 miles from here." "Ha ha! What's your uncle's little spread called?" he asked condescendingly. "Downtown Dallas," she replied. That ended the conversation. Afterward, they stopped at the post office to see if any mail had arrived. "Hi, Ranger," called the clerk. "Long time no see. I have a letter for you from someone named Rabinowitz." The ranger opened the letter and read aloud. "Levi, you haven't written. You haven't telegraphed. Are you wearing that cashmere sweater I bought you for Hanukkah? Are you eating enough vegetables? Have you heard from that nice lady Shira? I haven't seen her since the divorce. I'm sending you a salami as soon as you let me know where you are." "Uh-oh," he said. "I guess she hasn't heard that we..." "What you mean we? There's no we until you ask. Hey, look at that herd of cattle over there. We should discuss the cattle versus sheep issue." And she muttered something not quite proper for a lady. "Sometimes I think you like that horse better than me, in fact. Now cut that out," he bellowed. Their horses had now arrived by special train, and they were ready to head south to confront the gang. After riding a while at a gentle pace, they came upon a man resting on a large peddler's pack at the side of the road. "Whoa there, masked man," he said with a bit of a smirk. "How come you're wearing those white pants? They look ridiculously tight for you." The ranger reached down to his holster, but noticing that the man was unarmed, he simply said in a loud and hostile voice, "What's your name, stranger?" "Levi," the man replied with a friendly smile. "Hey, that's my name. And I suppose your last name starts with an R, wise guy." "No, with an S for Strauss." The ranger bought 3 pairs of blue jeans, and the couple rode on. As they rode along, Shira looked up, noticing a pillar of cloud that seemed to follow them. Or were they following the cloud? It seemed to be guiding them somehow, and she began to think of where they were going and what the future would bring. So she started to softly hum a few bars of the wedding song. He didn't seem to notice. She said, Well, what? You know what we've talked about. Do you want to be the Lone Ranger all your life? And those tight white pants do look a little funny. I think Silver threw a shoe. We better stop at the next town. There must be a blacksmith or maybe a silversmith there. We could also stop for brunch." "Brunch? What in the thundering sagebrush is brunch? Are you from another planet or another century?" She was getting pretty irritated and sulked all the way to Slivoville. The blacksmith didn't think Silver needed a new shoe, so they proceeded to a restaurant named the Best Little Deli in Texas. Shira asked for a Western omelet and a salad, and the ranger ordered a hot pastrami on rye with potato salad, coleslaw, and a kosher pickle. When the waitress arrived with the dessert menu, the ranger looked anxiously at the ice cream selections. Shira grabbed the menu from his hand and yelled, "What are you thinking? You just had meat. I'll tell your mother." Now he was irritated. The waitress looked down and asked unselfconsciously, "Why are you wearing that mask?" "So no one will know he's Levi Rabinowitz," said Shira. "Stop that," he demanded. Now they were both irritated and stomped out, leaving a very small tip. Knowing that their mission was a difficult one, they decided to ask for help from their old friend Satchel, chief of the Hikawi. The ranger referred to their past exploits and the honor in which they held each other. So when the chief was asked if he would come to fight the violent gang, he replied with great dignity, "Bistu Mishuga? We're not going down there to get wiped out by those bums. You go. I'll stay here and entertain your girlfriend. Let me know how it goes." The ranger thought he'd try something else. He whistled for Silver and whispered something in his ear. The intelligent horse whinnied, and trotted off. In about 15 minutes, he returned with a little kitten sitting in the saddle. The ranger was enraged. "You stupid horse. I said bring a posse." As they were leaving, the chief said, "By the way, do you know how the Hikawi Indians got their name? We were riding in the desert and became completely lost. Finally, in frustration, I yelled, 'Where the heck are we?' 'Very funny,' grumbled the ranger, and they rode on. As they approached Chutzpah Verde, they noticed two men carrying a cluster of grapes on a pole between them. The ranger dismounted and asked if they could provide some information about the town they were approaching. 'First, tell us why you're wearing that mask, stranger, so no one will know he's—' 'Will you stop that?' he yelled. Caleb, the smarter-looking one, said, 'It's a nice town, nice people. They treat strangers very well.' But his partner, Nabi, said, 'Don't listen to this klutz. They're devils. They practice idolatry. They eat shellfish. The accountants carry shotguns. Don't go near the place.' The ranger and Tanta Shira moved on. It was almost high noon. The Ganas were ready for them. They opened fire with revolvers, rifles, blunderbusses, leftover matzo balls hard as rocks. But the sky darkened. Rain and brimstone fell and more. Was it a volcanic eruption? The Ganas ran in panic. 3 weeks later, all this behind them, the ranger was bar mitzvahed. It was a huge affair. 5-piece band playing klezmer, Avina's table, the works. You know, Shira said, as long as the rabbi is here. And that's the Jewish story of the Lone Ranger. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this distracted you for a few minutes from what's going on out there. And I hope you'll tune in to hear more videos and services. Please keep checking the website, check your email. We're sending out notifications about logging on and enjoying what we're providing virtually. And I thank my marketing department because they are working overtime, helping us provide all this content for you, our members, and for everybody out there in the virtual world who've decided to join us. So thank you all very much in marketing. Thank you, Steve Allen. Thank you to my fellow colleagues, my clergy, and thank you especially to all of you for helping us know how much this is appreciated. Shabbat Shalom.